The man plunged his hands into the cement ground, then he quietly muttered a spell. With a sudden burst of strength, a powerful force erupted from the earth. The sand immediately transformed into countless warhorses which charged toward the sea with a deafening roar. The man clenched his fists and the horses galloped over the ship's sails, righting the stranded vessel in an instant. Finally he clapped his hands and with a graceful stride walked out of the crowd's view. He was Jonathan, one of the last remaining magicians in the world. Jonathan's rising fame soon caught the attention of a British earl. The earl proposed sending Jonathan to the front lines to help the country fight against enemy forces. Jonathan eagerly accepted. However, when he and his servant arrived on the battlefield, they found that the soldiers didn't like him at all. The general looked down on him. His only role was to help the soldiers read letters from their families. In a casual conversation with the soldiers, he overheard their complaints about the rugged mountain roads with their new shoes almost falling apart. To prove his worth, Jonathan came up with an idea. The next day he took his servant to the mountains. He casually picked up a stone from the ground, then following the spell in his magic book he began chanting a spell over the stone. But the stone didn't respond. He tried again, but after hours passed the stone remained unchanged. Frustrated, he threw the stone down and turned to leave. Just then the stone suddenly split in two and the entire mountain began to shake. Turning around, they saw countless shards of rock shoot out from the mountain, which then automatically formed into a path stretching across the mountain slope for thousands of miles. Soon the soldiers were walking on the smooth road. The general was very pleased and appointed Jonathan as the Merlin sorcerer. However, Jonathan didn't expect that the general seemed to believe he was capable of anything. The general ordered him to move an entire forest. Jonathan explained that forests weren't like stones, they had their own consciousness and moving them wouldn't be easy. But the general was adamant. Reluctantly, Jonathan agreed. The next day, guided by the soldiers, he found the oldest tree in the forest because he had to negotiate with it to move. Jonathan stretched out his right hand toward the tree, closed his eyes and began muttering a spell. He was trying to use magic to move the forest, but the tree refused his request. Suddenly all the trees began making sounds, loudly protesting. The soldiers froze in place. Unexpectedly, the trees' cries attracted the enemy's attention. The enemy raised their guns and began firing wildly at Jonathan's direction. Everyone immediately fired back. The situation was critical, yet the captain insisted that Jonathan continue casting his spell. The next moment the enemy targeted them with artillery. A shell came flying at them. Jonathan's servant pushed him aside but was struck by the shell. Even worse, the magic book Jonathan had brought was blown to pieces in the explosion. When he regained consciousness, the soldiers had been completely surrounded by the enemy. Jonathan picked up the shattered book, muttered the spell and then blew a puff of mystical air over the remnants of the book. A white mist immediately spread from the book, enveloping the entire forest. This finally forced the enemy to retreat. But his servant had died and the magic book had been destroyed. Jonathan was overcome with an immense sadness.